ground rules, and they figured out how to do it. 3CDC and all those folks, you know, down there, all these people in gentrification. So there's a meeting today at 1 o'clock because right now in Over the Rhine, and there's more, we know there's 16 in the Over the Rhine and more in Mount Adams, there are these places that were built, rehabbed, but they're not anybody's residence. So what they're doing, they're turning them to Airbnbs. They're turning them, so basically, hotels that people are making a profit for, but they don't have to pay any hotel taxes, don't have to pay, so they're getting around the law. So lots of other cities have seen this phenomenon take place. And so today is the first hearing of what needs to be done. So please contact your Cincinnati council people to give them a stand that's like, these people need to be regulated just like everybody else. An Airbnb is a residence that's owned by someone, that takes care of someone. But these are places where nobody lives there. They're treating them as a hotel and therefore getting around the law. So that's at 1 o'clock. Today, obviously nobody's going to make it to that, but contact your Cincinnati councilman. I've got information on that to give to Peter. So let me fill you in on what's happening over the next couple weeks. So next week, since we've been doing this for almost 2 years, next week we're going to kind of have a Greater Cincinnati Dems reorganization because there's a very small group of us that's been keeping this going for 2 years. And as I have said almost every week when I get up here and speak, I'm not going to allow this to take over my life. Getting speakers every single week is a tremendous challenge. I can't even begin to tell you how hard it is. So next week we're going to reorganize how we do things. People that, instead of just handing me, oh, here, contact this person, now say, okay, you contact the person and this is the open calendar and you schedule them for that date. So we're going to reorganize next week, so that's the focus. So if you want this group to move forward, then you need to be here next Tuesday and be willing to step up. Because I've already had 2 people volunteer to be part of the scheduling committee. Mike has and Sue has, so I thank you very, very much because I'm not going to let it take over my life. I have grandchildren. They can take over my life.
They will.
Yes, and they will. So on November 27th, we're going to have Rabbi Barr. He's going to come and he's going to talk to us about how we move forward, how we change our focus, how we have a vision for where we go. On December 4th, we're going to have the Young Dems. And that's a very interesting group because they look at things differently than those of us that are a lot older.
And wiser.
And they look at things differently, and I think we need to listen to them because look what the kids at Parkland have done. We need to pay attention to these folks. So they're coming on December 4th. On 12/11, because of this right to the work thing, Brian Griffin from the AFL-CIO is going to come and speak to us why right to work is wrong for Ohio. So he's the communication director for AFL-CIO. Very good speaker. And on December 18th, Bob Kelly from the Center for Social and Emotional Learning is going to come. Because I think, you know, we as adults, we talk about this with kids all the time. But the social and emotional learning is about how we work with each other, how we deal with bullies, and you know there are adult bullies as well, how we interrelate. And so he's going to do an activity for about 20 minutes and then we're going to talk about it. So it's going to be a very interactive session. So that is what we have scheduled through the end of the year. I just want to give you a little bit of feedback about what I was in voter protection. Elizabeth and I did voter protection on election day. Our very first phone call for voter protection came in at 6:31 a.m. 6:31 a.m. We must have received over 100 phone calls between 6:30 and 7 a.m. Without any knowledge from Board of Elections, these scanning machines had been reprogrammed. No one communicated that to the Board of Elections. Same thing happened up in Toledo, by the way. Nobody, so no poll workers, nobody in election protection knew that the scanning machines had been programmed. Programmed so that you don't vote for too many, but it went conversely, you don't vote for too few. And so if you didn't vote for every single race that was down there, the machine was kicking your ballot out. And it took 3 hours, folks, for the Board of Elections to send out a mass call to the poll workers to tell them there was going to be a screen where you could say, I want you to accept my ballot as is. So over the first 3 hours in that 4-person race with Giz, Allen, Perrick, and Underwood, people were being forced to vote for 2 when they only wanted to vote for 1. That affected that outcome of that election. No doubt about it. So, but that was done without anybody's knowledge. Yes, sir?
Can they contest it?
I don't know. I'm not sure. Pavin is looking at it, but his numbers, we don't know what the numbers would have been, and that's the first 3 hours. That's a lot of people that came in between 6:30 and 9:30. The other thing that I thought was significant, I can't tell you how many places I had to get in my car and run to because I would also grab one of the voter protection attorneys to go with me. The number of people who were being denied provisional ballots by the poll workers. The judge ruled that all the 2 million people that had been purged, that they could go to the polls and vote provisional ballots. Provisional ballot basically says, I give you this information. They have 10 days to make sure that their address, their identification is correct. If at the end of that, then they'll count them. But the fact is that so many people were being denied provisional ballots. It was amazing. There was a lady said, even at the Urban League, they said to her, well, we'll give you a provisional ballot, but we're going to supervise your vote. I said, and so she comes out to me, and I walk in with her, and I take off my shirt, and I've got my voter protection t-shirt on, and I said, she will get a provisional ballot, and she will vote in private just like everyone else. And they looked at me and went, okay. I mean, it's just like, I was just amazed at the number of places that that happened. 2 voter protection people were actually put into a police car and there for over 2 hours because somebody complained. The poll workers did not like the fact that they walked into the polling place to help someone, even though that's their job. So there were some really awful things going on out there. And so that's a conversation for people who are staffing these polls. We have to have people that have the vision that people have the right to vote. And I saw lots of poll workers that did not have that vision. So I'm pontificating up here, but I just wanted to tell you what I saw and what I heard and what I know, and we have to bring this out and forward because we know Houston is now our lieutenant governor. We can expect more people to be purged from the polls. We can expect it. Voter suppression is alive and well in the United States. We know it's been going on, and this is Ohio, and that's really bad.
That's the Republican agenda.
Yeah, that is Republican agenda, purge the polls of anybody. Yes?
What part of town were you working in?
I was housed out of the NAACP, but we had people in polls all through Hamilton County, and so when there was, I went up to St. John's UCC on Reeser. I was out at another one in College Hill. I would think I was everywhere. I was out in Madisonville. I ran down to the Urban League. I can't tell you how many times I was down at the Urban League. I was really shocked that the Urban League, majority of the poll workers were white, and they were the ones that were denying people provisional ballots. I was really shocked at how they manned that polling place. So, there are things that we need to step up and let everybody know about. So over the next couple months, hopefully, we'll have someone from the ACLU that will talk about their lawsuit right now they have about gerrymandering, because gerrymandering really is very concerning for me right now, because we know the Secretary of State and the Auditor were supposed to be serving on that committee along with the Governor to make sure the gerrymandering was done correctly. Well, that's why we've got to base our hope in the court case that the ACLU has. So, but before I go on, I'm going to turn this over to Alberta. And we have some announcements here. I'll give it to Dot first.
On the 27th, I think that's
Wednesday, no, Tuesday, 27th. The Charter Committee is having their Gumption Award, and the Gumption awardee for long-term service to the city is Thane Maynard. It'll be held at the zoo, and if you go and get your ticket, it's free parking, and it's entrance to the Festival of Lights, as well as coming to the meeting in the main building. So I encourage you all to get on the website or call 241-0303 and make yourself a reservation for the Charter. The next night on the 28th, I'm hosting a meeting with Michelle Dillingham. She's interested, she is going to run again. She wants to hear from you what you care about at City Hall and what you think ought to be going on and what the impact of the new 2-year terms and the other things that have come through. So you're welcome to come. I live at 2109 Luray, which is across the street from the Eden Park Overlook Ponds in apartment 1. And you'll be welcome to come. And if you want to get my number later, I'll be happy to give it to you. But I hope you can come.
What's that date, Doug?
28th.
The date,
28th.
November 28th, and it's going to be in the newsletter. She's writing her card now.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, okay, we can do we will do announcements. Here we go. Then I'm going to get my word in.
I have a number of brief ones. Pat Bruns still has a chance to win. I talked to her this morning. They're doing recounts and stuff like that, so she still has a shot. And they're wanting to get volunteers to observe the recount process on Monday and Tuesday. So if any of you are interested, maybe you could help out with that. I'm interested in doing counter demonstration for Planned Parenthood. Anybody want to join me, see me about that, since you're not so busy with all the other stuff now. I have a list of people, some people ask me about writing to guys on death row, and I have some information if any of you want to be a pen pal. And Intercommunity Justice and Peace Center is having their annual meeting Thursday night. It's Cintas, and it's going to be about immigration, and they have a couple people who survived all this process. 7 o'clock at the Xavier Cintas Center.
Hi, real quick announcement about getting big money out of politics. Move to Amend is having their 4th public meeting this Sunday, the 18th, from 2 to 4 at the First Unitarian Church. And actually, it's only 2 to 3:45. We quit early, so you can go home on time. And it will be both Move to Amend and American Promise, 2 local organizations trying to get big money out of politics.
From your mouth to God's ears.
I just have a question. What's the role of our solidly Democratic county commissioners in terms of controlling the polling places and how they operate? I don't really know. It seems like they ought to be in charge of that. You think? And we had 2 of them already. Now we have 3. Is there something we need to do with our county commissioners? And at least we're turning blue here in Hamilton County. Thank you.
Board of Elections is what? Independent. Not controlled by the county. That doesn't have the county commissioners. That's why everybody has a hand in it down. If you go to the county, you go down to the Board of Elections, they have all kinds of people responsible down there. We have had good people in the past, and we're hoping to have them again, at least in this county. I don't know about you folks, but I was really depressed when I first heard the initial results of the election. But I have since discovered that in fact the turnaround in the House is the greatest switcheroo in 100 years. That we really have come forward and made some really significant changes in the House. I'm sorry about the Senate, but we just didn't have the right seats up at the right time. But we will have them up in 2 years, which is a real reason for an organization like this to keep on going. I hate to tell you that, but I think we're really needed out there, yes.
The lady in Arizona won, I heard this morning.
In Arizona, right. And so it's now 51 to 47, 51 to 48. It's getting really close. We had just Florida and Mississippi, I think, that are still out. And we have a chance at both of them. The Senate, I'm talking about the
I
Senate.
don't know whether this is the moment to mention this. Maybe after our talk is better, I'm not sure. But you may have read, as I did, was it in Cleveland paper or was it in the Inquirer, that the Ohio Democratic Party is thought to be in flux. And so many of us have known that we needed changes in the leadership of the Ohio DP. And so I hope we can put in our 2 bits about this at some point, have a discussion about it. David Pepper may be resigning. I personally hope to God he will. But I don't know how others feel. But sooner or later, we need to have some input about the Ohio Democratic Party.
Okay. For better or worse, folks, there's a lot of work for us to do in the next 2 years. I personally think that we have done some good. We have done some good here in the local Democratic Party. Let's hope that we can extend that out. Here we go.
Okay. Robert Sertovan. Okay, I think it's pretty neat that here we are the days after the election, probably in the most, the less political, I guess you'd call engagement, and we have a pretty good room. I think that's really good. That's nice. That's my announcement.
More good welfare than now.
Good and welfare. We've got a good group here. Without further ado, I'm going to read the notes that I have here on Dr. Laura Ann Weaver. She's well known to the members of the Cincinnati Democratic Club, that she's our person. She graduated from Brooklyn College with a BA in chemistry and a New York Dental School with a Doctor of Dental Surgery. Dr. Weaver was a captain in the United States Air Force, serving in Korea. She was a clinical instructor at NYU, where she taught oral diagnosis and treatment planning for 8 years, and an adjunct associate professor at University of Cincinnati. Dr. Weaver has been in dental practice for 42 years, concentrating on medically complex and infectious disease patient care. Wow. Okay. Dr. Weaver is a long-term member of the Democratic Party, a member of the Hamilton County Democratic Party Executive Committee, board member of the Cincinnati Women's Political Caucus. She was the first dentist to gender transition in Ohio, and is the only second transgender woman in the United States to run for U.S. House of Representatives. Remember, she gave up her seat so that AFTAB could run. She is a board member of Crossport, the oldest transgender support organization in the Greater Cincinnati area, and is a member of the Cincinnati VA Hospital LGBT Task Force for the support of transgender veterans. And, most importantly, Dr. Laura Ann Weaver is a member of the Greater Cincinnati Democratic Club. Without further ado, Dr. Weaver.
Thank you very much. You were all notified that this lecture was going to be about the amount of money that the military has in its budget that it spends in our community. Quite the contrary, that will be a very short subject because there's hardly any money spent in the Greater Cincinnati area and certainly not in Hamilton County to boot. So I'm going to sit down so I can have my computer in front of me because you certainly don't want to leave if you want to look at the screen. I'm going to first give you some background.
Can we turn the lights out?
Yes, we can. Is anybody turning the lights on? Okay. Well, does that look a little blurred to you? Oh, no, that is my eyeglasses. 'Cause I have my reading glasses on. Okay. This is who we like to think we are. In the Constitution, the preamble. In the Constitution, the preamble establishes 5 principles, and that is to establish justice, to assure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Establishing justice seems to be something that we are pretty much foregoing, because we take a pledge of allegiance, and the last line is liberty and justice for all. And I have yet to see justice for all. There are people who really promote domestic tranquility. These are the law and order candidates, and you'll find them predominantly in the Republican Party. We all agree that we have to provide for a common defense, but the question becomes, how much defense is enough defense? Because I'm going to show you historically how those numbers have changed, providing not just defense, but wasteful defense. To promote the general welfare, this is something that a lot of people ignore, because the fact of the matter is, people question why the federal government is involved in social welfare programs. Well, this is the reason why. And to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Some people, particularly, I don't want to mention any party, which I already did, but some people think that the blessings of liberty secured for ourselves means them specifically. It has nothing to do with the general welfare. And our posterity, their children, them and their children, to the exclusion of others. Well, these are your self-proclaimed law and order presidents, and there's no question about this. But I want to give you, to start, a little historical data and historical perspective as to what's going on. And I say that because this is the 100th anniversary of the end of World War I. And World War I closed the Napoleonic Wars, which started in 1789 with the French Revolution. At that time, the war has been between monarchies and republics. And that has continued through World War I, and finally resulted in the downfall of monarchies, in particular the Tsarist house of Romanov, the German Kaiser, the Italian king, all of the monarchies, the Sultan of Turkey, all of the monarchies fell at that point, and that established a new relationship where different forms of governments and the ability to experiment with governmental philosophies ensued. And I should be going the other way, thank you. And not everybody believes in democracy. So here's a quote by Mussolini: "Discipline must be accepted. When it is not accepted, it must be imposed. Fascism rejects in democracy the conventional lie of political equality. The present century is a century of authority, a century of the right, a fascist century." Well, we know where he stands in terms of promoting strongman dictatorships. The same thing with Adolf Hitler, who, in addition to the philosophy of Mussolini, included anti-Semitism, anti-parliamentarianism, and anti-communism. Also, his desire to expand Germany into the greater area of Europe and the promotion of the superiority of the Aryan race. Likewise, in the Pacific, the Japanese were in an expansionist mood. World War II actually started in 1931 with the Japanese invasion of Manchuria, and then in 1937 with their invasion of China, and then later on with the Italian invasion of Ethiopia, etc., etc., etc. But we like to think of it starting with the war between Germany and England in 1939. From the American perspective, it did not start until 1941. And this is what happened, because President Roosevelt and the United States then was a major minor power. It was something like the 16th in military power and world influence. But Roosevelt reasoned that if Great Britain goes down, the Axis powers will control the continents of Europe, Asia, Africa, Australia, and the high seas. It is no exaggeration to say that all of us and all the Americas would be living at the point of a gun. So he instituted a philosophy and directed a program to make the United States the arsenal for democracy. And this was a speech he made at chairside chat in December 1940, which is right after the election in which he promised to keep America out of any European wars. So November, he's elected. December, the United States becomes the arsenal for democracy involving the United States. Likewise, by the end of World War II, with the destruction of the European industrialized base and the supremacy of American industry, because we are one of the only powers who has not had their industrial base destroyed, the United States became very wealthy, all right? But by this time, all of the processes that Roosevelt started in making the United States the arsenal of democracy, turning that switch on made it impossible to turn that switch off. So that the military-industrial complex became something of a warning by Eisenhower, as now military procurement as a matter of capitalism became something controlled by lobbyists acting on Congress with ever-increasing allocations to the needs of the industry. Well, let's take a look at the threat that we are facing today, because the threat is mostly nuclear, as many of American adversaries cannot traverse an ocean to come here for an actual invasion. But they certainly can, and the microphone just died, and they certainly can have an impact, because we are not unreachable with nuclear weapons. So most of the nuclear powers are in Asia, and it's a strong probability that the next war, the next major war, is going to start by a war between Pakistan and India. So that you have these two Asian rivals, among which also are Russia, China, both in Asia, North Korea, there's India, there's Pakistan, Israel as a borderline area, but the original four, the United States, Russia, England, and France, right, now become lesser players, because everyone realizes that to be a major player, you have to have nuclear weapons. Thus, we have nuclear proliferation. All right, so here is China's Agni 5 missile, which was successfully tested in January of this year, and it has a 5,000-mile range. The United States did not object to India developing a missile platform capable of carrying nuclear weapons. The way it did with North Korea being capable of carrying nuclear weapons, but nevertheless, the threat is just as real. India now has under development the Agni 6, which is capable of carrying 5 independently targeted nuclear weapons in a merged system, so that they now become a real super threat. Pakistan still has intermediate missiles capable of carrying nuclear weapons, but the missile is capable of covering all of India. Now, you've heard the expression that only mad dogs and Englishmen go out in the noonday sun. I'm going to include Pakistan among that group. There is a woman in Pakistan, a Christian Pakistani, who was arrested, tried, and found guilty of blasphemy and sentenced to death. The courts have since reversed that and let her go, much to the chagrin and riotous protests of Muslim fundamentalists in Pakistan. What she was guilty of was drawing water from a well that is Muslim. So Allah owns the water, and this Christian woman took water from the well. That was a death sentence. So I don't believe the Pakistanis have their heads screwed on correctly. And there's certainly going to be ramifications with this, because there is certainly an emotional need to control the population of Pakistan, and war is one way of doing it. So the relationship between Pakistan and India becomes of paramount importance, and this is a relationship between two nuclear powers which currently have border conflicts in the sub-regions of Asia. This is the range of the new North Korean nuclear weapon, which is 5,000 miles, which will reach most of the United States, and including Cincinnati. And don't be surprised when I tell you that Cincinnati is a nuclear target. General Electric makes 90% of the free world's jet engines in Cincinnati, and the Brent Spence Bridge has 1/3 of the north-south truck traffic crossing it. So these are very instrumental things, very basic to what you want to take out in a nuclear attack, not to mention the rail yard that is in Cincinnati, which is, the switching yard is 48 tracks wide. It is the largest switching yard east of the Mississippi. The one in Atlanta is 38 tracks wide. And taking this out will cripple the United States industrial capacity for a long time to come. So this is the budget we have in 2018. The Donald Trump administration increased the budget from $639 billion, and it's currently sitting now at $776 billion. All right. So here we can look at the spending, both the mandatory and discretionary spending of the military budget from fiscal year 2017 to what is projected in 2023. Now these yellow patches, orange patches you see above the bar graphs, these are overseas contingency operations, which is allocated at $20 billion as a matter of projection, but in fact it comes out to a lot more. So it was $82 billion in 2017, it's already $64 billion in 2018. So that if you have operations like the B-1 bomber flying from Guam to Korea and back as a matter of threatening North Korea, and you do that a couple of times, that costs a lot of money. These bombers are extremely expensive, they have limited lifespans, and at the same time, they cost something like $30,000 an hour to operate. So that, where does that money come from? These are the overseas contingency operations. All right, now this is the B-1 bomber. During the Ronald Reagan administration, the United States had ordered an initial order of 100 B-1 bombers. The airplane cost $580 million. We ordered 100 of them. $580 million is the annual budget of the Cincinnati public education system, which we can't afford. There are currently 64 of these planes left in service after initial procurement cost of $494 million per plane, plus parts. All right? The B-2 bomber was the most expensive airplane built. It superseded the B-1 bomber. We had ordered 21 at $900 and something million apiece, close to $1 billion for this airplane. There are only 3 available for combat deployment out of 21. But this is the highlight of the Air Force capacity. This is the upcoming B-21 bomber, now under development. Its cost is so high that it is classified. The numbers are not even available to the congressional committees that control it. The plan is to buy as many as 145 aircraft and have an initial operating capacity by 2030. Now, this plane is rumored to be, that it can be operated both by pilots and by remote control. So this is a Cadillac with everything in it. For what purpose? It's a purpose-built aircraft, but that purpose changes. We had huge deployment of aircraft that were meant to carry nuclear weapons, all of which had to be retracted because everything we were fighting were brush wars, non-nuclear wars. This is the newest fighter plane in the American inventory. The Air Force purchased at $148 million apiece, 1,760 airplanes. The Navy at $337 million apiece, bought 260, while the Marine Corps, having a need for a more diversified aircraft, their plane cost $251 million and they bought 420 of them. This airplane is now being deployed in Asia, and there's no question that the tension, the military tension between the United States and China is quite high. It's only the public face of the Chinese-American relationship that we're looking at, which is reasonable. But the Chinese are undergoing military expansion and protectionism the same way the Japanese did prior to World War II. So combined, the United States had ordered 2,443 aircraft at an average cost. Do I have the average cost? Yeah, thank you. And at a cost of $1.5 trillion. All right. Now, I can get ironic about this and say the Chinese are paying for it because they're lending us. They're lending us the money. But this is in addition to the new 308 ship Navy, which is costing nearly $600 billion. And the increase in the number of active duty troops going up by over 100,000, I'm sorry, by 40,000, from 465 to 540,000 active duty troops at an extra cost of $12 billion. So this is the current American expansion under a militarized president that has great emphasis on border security and military spending. So the National Defense Appropriations Bill for 2017 and 2018, I did a lot of research on this, had outlays of $587 billion and $540 billion, going up to $667 billion. So in 2014, this is the pie graph of what the government income is, not the numbers, but the percentage going to various, from various sources, all right? So 40% of personal income tax, the federal budget is made up of 40% of personal income tax. It is made up of 29% of Social Security and Medicare payments. Corporate taxes were 9%, excise taxes 8%, and borrowing to complete the budget was 14%. In other words, the government operated at 14% over budget. It didn't have enough money to cover. Likewise, the outlay at the same time, right, was 42% for Social Security. It takes in 29%, but it shells out 42%. Law enforcement and general government 2%. New interest, net interest on the debt is 6%. That's just to tread water. This isn't the deficit, this is the debt. The deficit is actually going up by $1 trillion next year, which is unprecedented and quite frankly, quite frightening. National defense, veterans and foreign affairs, 22%. Veterans, because the VA hospital program, the Veterans Administration, is not part of the DOD. It's a separate cabinet position. And the DOD, the Veterans Administration, has a annual budget of $27 billion. That is separate from the military budget. All right, in 2016, these things shifted a little bit. So here it is in 14, and you take a look at national defense, foreign affairs, and so forth. And, oh, here it is, yeah. Okay, here it is. So national defense became larger, smaller? Let me see. Okay. This is outlays. Right, outlays 22%. All right, and yeah, it went down by 1%. This is pre-Trump doing the increase. This is 2016 at the end of the Obama administration. I don't have a pie chart. The pie charts are part of the Internal Revenue Service data that I've accumulated. They don't have a 2017 pie or a 2018 pie. That should be coming out in March of next year. The federal budget deficit has swelled to $779 billion, and as I said, it's going to swell even higher to $1 trillion. All right. At the same time, Trump has given in his tax break, the wealthiest 1% got 82% of the benefit. The middle class has gotten 18% of the benefit, which comes out to about $2,300 or $2,700 per household. But the lowest level of income, the poorest people, got no benefit at all. I got one statistic that said that the benefit of people who were at the borderline poverty class got a benefit of 25 cents out of all of this. So that you can see that the tax structure, the corporate taxes, which were income, okay, which was corporate taxes, 8% of the government stream, that's going to go down to about 6% because the corporate income tax went down to 21%. All right. The Republican answer to this tax shortfall, even after raising the degree of military expenditures and the deficit spending and the tax break, is to reduce the Social Security benefit. And this has been stated quite publicly by Paul Ryan prior to the tax cut, and now more recently by McConnell, in that they are going to reduce Social Security benefit, Medicare, Medicaid, and all social programs, including community development. Now, the weapons development and arms proliferation that's going on now is evident in the United States, expressing its desire, and I believe it's already done so, of leaving the pact with the Russians. I believe that was the SALT II treaty. But the Chinese were never included in that. And the Trump administration wants the Chinese to be in that, which of course they refuse. Now, getting the East European countries into NATO was what provoked the Soviet Union, I should say, what provoked Russia. Russia has always desired a border a buffer between Germany and Russia. Russia was invaded twice by Germany. It was historically invaded by Germany. It wanted Russian troops really advanced on the on the German border for many, many decades. In fact, prior to the non-aggression pact that Stalin signed with Germany prior to World War II, which helped spark the active conflict, Russia had desired and negotiated a non-aggression pact with England and France, which the English and French turned down because Russia desired to have Russian troops based in Poland as an advance guard for any potential German attack. France and England refused. The Russians turned around and signed a pact with Germany. There are potential adversaries and real adversaries in the world. Iran has become a patron of Islamic republicanism. Now, prior to World War II, with the fall of the European monarchies, there were 6 major types of government that arose. There was American democracy, there was French parliamentary democracy, there was Russian communism, Japanese imperialism, fascism, and Nazism. All right, 3 dictatorships, 4 dictatorships. If you call Russia a dictatorship, it is actually, they promoted themselves as promoting political equality in an authoritarian, centralized government. So it was a dictatorship. All right. So here is the Iranian military picture, because they are screaming death to America, death to Israel. Their position is well known. They give support to the Taliban. They are arming rebels in Yemen and Somalia. There is a religious Cold War with Saudi Arabia. They support anti-government factions in Libya, and they send arms to Hezbollah and to Hamas, and they are actively in an armed intervention in Syria. So they are active all around them. Their interest in nuclear weapons is very simple. Russia has nuclear weapons to their north. India has nuclear weapons to their south. Pakistan has nuclear weapons to their southeast. China has nuclear weapons to their direct east, and Israel on the west. So the Iran is in between, and it cannot have any real voice unless it goes nuclear. And this was the American fear. The Iranian missile program will be able to reach all of Saudi Arabia, all of Turkey, the southern part of East Europe, and half of industrialized Russia. Saudi Arabia, on the other hand, is no friend of the United States and certainly no ally. They are acting in Saudi Arabia's self-interest and is the patron spiritually and financially of an international campaign of terrorism called Wahhabism. All right. Now the Saudis are conducting a bombing campaign in Yemen, a diplomatic boycott of Qatar. They support the Madrasa school system teaching hatred of Jews, Christians, Hindus, and non-Sunni Muslims. Internally, they oppose the rights of civil liberties in Saudi Arabia. They export Wahhabism to Africa. They support the Assad government. Yes, this is against American interests. They support Sunni groups against the Shiites in Iraq, and they have a proxy war going on in Iran. At the same time, they export Wahhabism to Afghanistan and Pakistan. So this is the conflict that's going on in the Middle East besides Israel and Palestine, which now appear to be quite minor to the greater regional instability caused by Iran and Saudi Arabia. And this is why it's important to the United States in this military-dominated economy. I thought I would never get back to this. All right. But Donald Trump has become the biggest promoter of the sale of military equipment in the world. So that when Turkey decided they were going to buy a Russian anti-aircraft system, the United States went ballistic. Pardon the pun. All right. But we went ballistic because they weren't buying American arms. And that's really what it's all about. American foreign policy is not about the promotion of democracy or about the promotion of individual liberties. It is about the promotion of weapons to support an arms industry in the United States. And this is the proof of the pudding. Because here is Jamal Khashoggi, who walks in to the Saudi embassy in Turkey in order to get a marriage license. He is quickly abducted, murdered, hacked up, and disappears. And the Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman, doesn't know anything about it, all right? But 15 people flew on Saudi planes to Turkey the day before Khashoggi goes to the embassy, and apparently the embassy doesn't know he's murdered in the embassy, chopped up, and they cover up all the blood and so forth, and the body disappears. The government of Saudi Arabia disclaims knowledge of any of this. And Trump is willing to accept it. Amazing how it's got off the news. If you wait long enough, the next news story becomes paramount. But military weapons are not just another capital commodity to be sold. They're linked to national security. They are an extension of American foreign policy and to give a country the right to defense and support of American foreign policy. The exportation of weapon systems is only, or should only be, in the interest of the United States. Instead, it's the lobbying effort to the United States government with an agreeable administration that is allowing arms proliferation and greater threat of war. Oh, let's get this. Okay. And yet, at the same time, right, Trump is promoting his border wall costing $25 billion. Now, I'm not opposed to Trump's wall, providing it crosses the Ohio River and is capable of taking truck traffic. All right? Because this is his $25 billion wall, which he can afford, but he can't afford $1.2 billion for a Brent Spence bridge. And this bridge covers 1/3 of the north-south commercial truck traffic east of the Mississippi and is vital. This is, excuse me, my sinus has decided to give me Cirrus 2 days ago, so I couldn't wait. Couldn't wait another 48 hours. The Trump administration claims that most terrorists are foreign-born. Here is the actual statistic. 549 convictions for international terrorism. 254 were Americans. 148 were American citizens through naturalization. And 147 were U.S. citizens by birth. So of 295 what is the total number here? 295, 549. Of the 549, less than half of them were foreign-born terrorists. Yet, this is the basis for the national security claims of the United States. This does not include all the mass shootings by Americans one on another and so forth, which I forgot the exact number, but it is it's astronomical. We have 30,000 auto deaths a year. We have twice as many shootings a year. We have more than twice as many opioid overdoses. So there is a great many things wrong with the priorities of the administration, with the promotion of national defense as opposed to social programs. The opioid epidemic is definitely a tragedy. There's no question about that. The drug overdoses are increasing yearly. The 2016 deaths is over 4,000. In 2017, it was 4,900 a year. We've already supplanted that in 2018. I'm not going to get that statistic until February 2019. And I'll get that statistic from the Centers for Disease Control. These are the real problems that we have. Homelessness, hunger, urban decay, needing support. And I'm talking about neighborhood renewal, urban renewal, not just tear it down and middle-class urbanization. The militarization of the police, which started in the Obama administration, is carried through to the Trump administration, in which excess military equipment, because if you're going to buy more military equipment, what do you do with the old stuff, man? You give it to the police departments. So that the protesters in Ferguson, Missouri, were met by machine gun carrying armored troop carriers and weapons loaded police in armored uniforms. And this all happily supplied. Hamilton County gives more money in federal taxes than money it receives from the federal government. Now, I don't have exact numbers on this because it is so difficult to obtain. I have to go to all of the individual departments. The only money we really get from the federal government is what comes through the Veterans Administration. I don't know what percentage we get through the VA hospital here in Cincinnati. We do have a major hospital, but what the federal government doles out to our area is quite minor compared to the billions of dollars that it expends in other parts of the country. We don't have Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. We don't have Fort Knox. We don't have any of the Air Force bases or naval bases in California. We have no military structure in the greater Cincinnati area, so we don't benefit from any of those funds, although we do pay our share, and at the same time we get no social benefit from programs because those programs are being diminished. Oh, and my most important point, we have been poorly represented in the United States House of Representatives, all right? That's a direct thing to Steve Chapman. I am willing to enter the, all very quiet. You know, I may have shocked you, but I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions.
The second trillion got to me. Or was it the third trillion? Was it the third trillion?
Yeah, I have a question here. You want to give the gentleman a microphone?
Could you tell us the names of the companies and a little about the hydraulics of the money?
Can't hear you, please.
Okay. Now can you?
No. Turn it on, maybe it's turned on.
Okay, you got it? Yeah. Okay. Could you tell us the names of the big companies and a little about the hydraulics of the money flow from the companies to the politicians and the old generals?
Well, the money going to the politicians are direct lobbying efforts. And they're talking about major players like Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, and the Navy contractors that are on the East Coast in Newport News, and the naval construction yards in Georgia. So there's a lot of things going on in terms of construction. Chrysler is a tank manufacturer. So all of these companies that get military contracts wind up. It's why we have a space program. It is not because we're on a mission to expand human knowledge. To human knowledge, we're expanding is military knowledge, how to get greater payloads up, and so forth in order to do greater military things. This has now resulted in what you might call the Space Force that Donald Trump is now promoting. But this isn't about troops in outer space. This is about military surveillance. It's about internet security and security through through other channels. Surveillance by satellite, surveillance of satellite pilots of other countries. So this is something that is currently carried on by the Air Force. They're going to separate it and make it an independent entity.
I hear what you're saying, but I'm also thinking the Democrats are not.
Hold it up.
The Democrats are responsible for a lot of the military buildup. He's just escalating it.
Oh, I agree.
You know, I mean, it's this whole business of the Democrats always supporting wars, our foreign policy, which is go in, take over a country, and bring in our business, and the heck with the natives. So it's getting worse, but there's a history to it. That's what I want to say.
There is a history to it, and it didn't start with the Trump administration. The Trump administration just upped the ante. It was throughout the Obama administration, although he did cut back on the military budget from 2014 to 2016. But and the Trump administration brought it back up, and then some. It's the then some that is what is straining the American budget. But overall, if you take a look at various administrations, and I can give you some very good examples in the Eisenhower administration, for example, because they tried developing a nuclear aircraft engine at General Electric. That was Project Pluto, and which just didn't work. It was from the project was from 1953 to 1958. And when Eisenhower decided to close down the program, all of a sudden it was that the Russians had succeeded in developing an engine, and it was they had them now deployed on some of their bombers. So the program was allowed to go on for another 2 years, 3 years, until it was shut down by John Kennedy as being unobtainable, because all it did was spew nuclear material all over the place. In fact, there is an area of General Electric which is buried because it can't be cleaned. So they buried the site. All right, and I'm trying to find more information about that. I've contacted the Nuclear Regulatory Commission about their oversight on it, and I haven't gotten the response. I could sue under the Freedom of Information Act, but I have to show standing. So the only person who could really sue is a U.S. Senator or the concurrent member of the House of Representatives, Steve Chabot, is not about to sue.
Okay, I was just also thinking, keeping going, this business of expanding NATO to the borders of Russia.
Yeah.
I had someone say to me, well, you know, Angela Merkel came from Eastern Germany, and so she has this, this feeling and fear. And I'm thinking, hell, who invaded Russia? You know, France, Germany, France under Napoleon, Germany, and it's like people don't even know their history, and that's
No, but the fact is they all invaded each other because Tsar Alexander rode through the Arc de Triomphe in Paris after defeating Napoleon, along with the Prussians and the English. So what goes around comes around in Europe. They're all busy fighting each other. And this is a big family argument among the cousins and children of Queen Victoria until it ended with World War I. But this was superseded by other forms of government which had to be dealt with. After World War II, it came down to the United States and Russia as being the only two viable forms of government. But now the Iranian Revolution brought in militarism under Islam, and of course there's the Wahhabism in Saudi Arabia. It was the Saudis who laid the groundwork for the destruction of the World Trade Center and the bombings in the United States, not the Iranians.
Listen, let me say this. This has been a wonderful talk, and I'm real glad I remembered all the details that you've given us. But at this point, I'd like to hear from people as to how we react to this. Why are we still alive? Will we be alive tomorrow? It's amazing if we can all get up tomorrow. But you've given us a whole lot, and you could talk for days. I know that. I can see that. You have tremendous information, but...
I've been accused of that.
Well, let's hear from each other about feelings about...
I was gonna call it, we're gonna...
Okay, I just want to say it's another example of why we should fight for move to amend to get money out of the big money and the big lobbying out of politics, because a lot of this is just the result of the success of big money lobbying.
And I agree with that, but there are national consequences to national security companies and the arms industry lobbying for more money, for more arms, because it is an influence on national policy which should not be there.
If Pakistan and India have a nuclear war, would it destroy the world?
Not during their war, but they are opening up a Pandora's box. The only excuse I have for the United States using a nuclear bomb against Japan is that had we not done it and learned the effects of it, that we would have opened up the next war with it.
I know, but does that float all around the whole world, all that contamination?
Yes.
It would pretty much be the end of civilization.
Well, I don't
if we have a nuclear war.
I don't think this is going to be an on-the-beach scenario where everyone's going to die of radiation poisoning. But it's certainly going to have a major effect.
What would happen?
That has yet to be determined. Yeah. What happened after Japan? There are still people dying of radiation poisoning, but in lesser numbers. Yeah, in the end, Earth abides.
I just have one that might be a really, really scary question.
Yeah.
And talking about nation state versus a global government, and whether the EU could ever lend itself to creation of a global government. Virtual currency and Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Could that really create a global have versus have not society?
No.
It will not transcend all the nation state hatred?
No, Bitcoin will ultimately collapse.
Oh, okay. Are we gonna get a lot of money from NIOSH?
Yeah, and I don't believe in one world government, because if we had Nazi Germany involved in one world government, then the world would have no recourse and not be a very nice place. So we need different nation states in order to have the checks and balances on one another. Thank you. I hope you're all properly depressed. I brought some Prozac with me.
This is, yeah, the doctor has offered us Prozac, put that in the notes. It is not a good message, but it is Prozack.
I do have a DEA license.
No, I'm sure you do. I am totally impressed. Shocked, yeah. I mean, it only gets worse with time. I mean, I've known that this has been bad for years and years and years, and it just seems to get worse under Trump. And I think we need to get some of the money under control, I think. And I think that's one of the things that we have to think about doing in the short term, is just taking back control of the money. And I hope you guys believe me that we've got to try.
Yeah, this is like the NRA on steroids.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's not comforting, because I don't like the NRA either.
The Moss family has made a lot from that military stuff.
Okay, Yeah, okay. What we need to do is make sure we get all of the food taken care of. If there's anything left over there, I'm not sure that there is, but if there is, take it home. Thanks again. You have been a wonderful audience. You are tremendous people. Thank you for being here and getting a little educated with me. I know, that's how I feel about it.
I'll talk about another subject the next time you want to be depressed.
Okay, well, we've done very well today. Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it, Laura. Thank you, thank you, thank you.